Welcome to New Intelligence on a collision course with sanity, as you know it. To cut down on life, life invented death. And to make up for death, life created life. And to compensate for the anxiety all of this caused, it let men have the concept of reality, which can explain away anything. If, a brief essay, if people with poor sex lives are the greatest readers of erotica, then what implications does this carry regarding men studying everything else? If, that is, if you don't care for this question, I'd just ignore it if I were you. Okay, kids, let's sing. If you're stupid and you know it, clap your hands. If you're stupid and you know it. Miss Johnson, what are hands? Okay, kids, I guess that's enough for today. Breath has a connection to mind similar as your internal does to the external. Conversation in the key of C. Now that we live upstairs, let's be concerned about those in the basement. Well, you be concerned if you want to, but leave me out of it. Now we return you to your normal score. The warrior, in preparing for having to meet life head-on the verbal field of battle, greased his head so no words would stick. Reality, who just happened to be watching our show, heard this and thought, I'd like to see somebody try that with me. Of course, what he meant to say was that he would like to see some head try that with him. Sitting one day on his back porch, a man said to his cat, who had joined him, I had much more enthusiasm for everything when I was younger and leaner. And hunkering down even deeper in his big comfy chair added, boy, I'm glad those days are gone. Since men realize that they don't understand what's going on, they pretend that they do by coming up with such concepts as history, psychology, religion, anthropology, and so on. Our early spring fairy tale. Life once set a man out on a special mission with a bag full of jokes. Well, actually, it was just one joke, but it was a real good joke. Anyway, where was I? At any rate, life sent a guy out on this special mission and gave him this real good joke. But every time he'd stop somewhere and tell it, no one would laugh. So after giving it a little thought, he tried telling the joke backwards. Then people began to respond. They began to get mad and all serious like. And the man said to himself, what the hell is all this? Then life suddenly got it, and it began to laugh. Moral, guess. Yeah, that's right. Go on, just guess what the joke was. And now for some other news. Those on a forced march find little humor in the prospect of a parade. Much less joy over a play-by-play commentary regarding the proceedings. But life, after all, does offer some solace in the fact that anyone who survives will be shot. One man showed up at local reality's unemployment office with his head turned inside out, but was immediately met with a response, hey, don't try pulling that stuff around here. Something they never tell you in public mystical school. The one thing that really pisses mystics off is the fact that although there's only one path from Paris to Istanbul, there's 100 friggin' trains or more running there. Okay, the other thing that really gets mystics by their short hairs is the fact that while there's got to be 1,000 or more ways to go from Paris to Istanbul, there's only one damn train running there. We now return you to your normal state of disarray. And now today's fable from the workshop. One guy finally said, I just screw it. And the screw said, I just man it. And now for sure, seriously, we return you to wherever you came from. The biology of psychology as treatment. Therapy. An attempted tether back to the herd. With life, there is never a present true state of affairs, and it is the responsibility of man's mind through its concept of reality to say otherwise. More train travel lower from a window seat. The more exciting it gets, the plainer it gets. And the plainer it gets, the more exciting it gets. A short scientific paper regarding the matter of men being born and all that kind of thing. Somebody drew up a street plan for the city. Then the city got built. Then somebody remembered the street plan. And some people went to look for it. Thank you for your attention. There will now be a 15-minute break before the next speaker. Thank you. The restrooms are down the hall to your left. Thank you. Don't forget, 15 minutes. Thank you. A man who breeds bulldogs in West Virginia and who's seen our show writes to say that he'd be glad to take on the job of making available written transcripts of our shows if he can charge at least $10 and keep the majority of it for himself and his dogs. On a brisk, confident morning, one man looked at the inside reflection of his head in the mirror and said aloud, "If life had a theme song, you'd be it." Moral? Hey, why not? What you got to lose? Ordinary predictions breed anxiety, and the ordinary benefit not one whit from anxiety. In the advanced person's personal dictionary, you might find such terms as grace, revelation, and divine favor replaced by dumb luck as experienced by the more intelligent. Local reality told the territorial governor, life will only close shop after the last customer is served, knowing it to be a bald-headed lie. Fear, plain old everyday, run-of-the-mill physical fear has driven more men to become king than all of the curses spat by Adam since he had to go to work. Local reality asked a viewer, does he sometimes refer to kings and such, meaning man's slow intellectual rock climbing? Living in a closed system, a closed mind is totally adequate. To cut down on the amount of reading he found himself involved in, one man decided to take on no material by any author who had ever written any biographical information about himself. Though some things never change, life is not one of them. History's latest ad carried the slogan, "Available now, myths suitable for all occasions." But it had to be withdrawn in that the firm of fear and stupidity had already laid claim to it. A boy asked his father, how can that which is intended to reveal end up acting to conceal? And the elder looked down at the lad with a degree of surprise and replied, you're not from this planet, are you? We now return you to your normal alien point of entry. One man presented this question, if there are no such things as accidents, then why is the word in the dictionary? But we could ask him how he ever happened to stumble across the word. One day, local reality called up this one guy on the phone and said, hey, are you still trying to do all that weird stuff you used to talk about? And suddenly, glancing out the window and seeing life coming toward his house, the man said, can't talk now, gotta go, and hung the hell up. A condensed history of myth, legend, and fable. When they first started, they were all serious. No, wait, no, I guess I've got that wrong. When they first appeared, they were all sort of humorous and lighthearted. No, that's still not right. Screw it. And the hammer said, I heard that. Past a certain point, the more alert traveler comes to a milepost which says, It is not what my mind thinks that bothers me, but the fact that it does so at all continually without my beforehand agreement, my contemporaneous awareness, or my conscious input. All of that is now what bothers me about my mind. The problem, reflected one man laying down the book in his hands, is that the teaching and instruction in matters metaphysical always seem to be just introductions and prefaces, often splendid and intriguing ones, but then they suddenly end there, never going any further. Some things never change, and this is one of them, until you are more aware of life's own ceaselessness. A true thinker, someone who will say, other people's ideas make my head hurt. Mental aggression, dog-do on the mystical path. Worrying about what the mind thinks is like fretting over why glue's sticky. I don't get it. I was afraid of that. Yeah, but I still don't get it. Yeah, I figured as much. That's why I said I was afraid you wouldn't. Yeah, but I still don't get it. Yeah, and the only way out is to stick to that story. We now return you to your normal brand of flypaper. A viewer writes, recently, or last year, I was watching your show, or washing my shorts, when I either had a small mystical experience or else got my finger caught in the faucet. Any response you might have to this episode would probably be meaningless inasmuch as I am now back to my semi-normal condition. Moral: mystics with 10-watt bulbs above their desk would rather be feared or disliked than ignored. The question then becomes, for those working on the power lines, of just how one can return to normal. Seriousness, life's original joke, as ultimately mangled by man. How fish would look at it if they had an intellect to see with. Quoting now, as long as the net's alive, I'm still okay. If an activity presents as evidence of its efficacy personal testimonials and anecdotes from its followers, you can save your skepticism for another occasion. That guy never does pay off. One guy's mind said to him, if you'd spend as much effort in editing as you do in thinking, then we might, and he interrupted the sentence, knowing already exactly where it was headed. Moral: it takes a real man to stand up to a mind. Headline: life moves at a certain speed, and no amount of mystics is going to change it. Hell, they can barely change their own. One day a certain fellow thought, quite suddenly and unexpectedly, if I could stop this train, I could get off. But after a moment's reflection, mused on, but what would that accomplish? Then a bit more pondering brought him to think, but what if I could stop the train while still riding on it? Aha! That's it. In the strange land of the more demanding, those without sheep have the best sheepdogs. Don't ask me to explain it. Go there and see for yourself. A calm man is a dead man, unless we're speaking of him mentally. Then he's more alive. If, of course, he's a mystic, and that's what he intended, of course. To help him over his allegory attacks, the physician recommended deep breaths. Later, to get him past his reality anxiety, he suggested direct confrontations with life. Original thought: the mystic's drug of choice. Looking at the lives of others, he thought, as long as you can do it, I can define it. Living in a closed system, a closed mind is totally adequate. After all the times I've tried to get to consider that this is a closed system by every three-dimensional perception, all the way from scientific to ordinary, it just simply is. There is no way past, you'll never live to see human intelligence as it is now to find anything other than a closed system, whether it again be philosophical musings or it be supposedly cosmologically, scientifically based, technically supported observations and experimentations. It is a closed system as far as the 3D, as far as a man's intellect seeing a three-dimensional reality. If that's all he sees, it's a closed system. In a closed system, all sermonizing to people about what they should be doing, how they should change their lives, in a sense it's charitable to call it a meaningless hobby, because they're always talking about, at the basic level, changing a man's physical behavior from an animal to the civilized. But then once people individually attempt to take that a bit more personally, people believe that there is some specific activity in which they might be involved, then they begin to talk about trying to liberate the mind, trying to consider new ideas, trying to reach a new level of consciousness. If for no other reason, to realize the difficulty involved, we'll forget the idea that's impossible. How about just the difficulty, one thing at a time? You want me to repeat that part in English? Is that within a closed system, a closed mind is absolutely, totally adequate. And by a closed mind, you can take it in its regular pejorative sense of people saying that, boy, you got a closed mind, or you take it in the way that I sort of inferred it with a sentence, that within a closed system, a creature, thinking creatures as we would call them, that have a similar mind, that you can imagine a closed-in universe being in your head and that be your intellect, and it being just a small version of a closed system, speaking at the universal, that it is totally adequate. No conditions, and no saying you'll get by, it is totally adequate. Once that is established, then to realize, in sort of a new way I was trying to get you to consider, that it is far beyond a new level of useless hobbying to try to do anything further. There's besides making it sound that way that anything additional would be useless, under all ordinary conditions, if you're following this, to attempt to open up the mind in some way within a closed system, if we could have it both ways. If we could take an ordinary person and do that to them, that person would be nut city. Well, I should not be so flippant to all of our insane, crazy friends watching in TV land. It would be people that would have severe mental problems, psychological difficulties. Nut city. Because then you would begin to try and make explanations of a closed system that would always have a major hole in it. You can start making up your own allegories. You'd be attempting to bail water, and every time you picked up the particular bucket that you thought was a new explanation, the thing has a bigger and bigger hole in it. Or you'd be attempting to, look at another way, patch up the many questions, the holes that seem to be in the man's sense of reality as it's always been described. You're attempting to patch it up, and every time you look around and attempt to patch it up using a non-closed mind, you simply make the hole bigger, or it moves. It gets worse. All of the so-called questions that people believe they have about justice and fairness and the inexplicably uncivilized, inhumane behavior of their fellow man. They believe that there's an answer to that, and there is no answer to that. They believe that there is a flaw in human nature, and there is no flaw. They believe then, some people go as far as say, well, it's got to be a flaw in our perception. And that sounds as though you're on the verge of making tremendous progress. It sounds as though you're on the verge of some transcendental view of life, and you're still not. Because once you understand that a closed system is adequately explained, it is totally explained, all that is necessary is a closed mind. That anything less, you're dealing, at the ordinary level, you're dealing with an injured mind. You're dealing with less than a standard, minimally standard mind. Therefore, every time, let's assume that you have some ability to hear beyond the ordinary energies running up and down the spine and making your brain percolate from one side to the other. Bert, Ernie, you know that. Big bird, little bird, big bird, universal, local, good, bad. If you can see it all beyond that, it renders every question that your own mind has, it doesn't even render them moot anymore. Because it's not that your mind was wrong. There's a kind of tap dance that I was mentioning about having to dance on coals or trying not to let your mind stick to anything. That is absolutely, in case it's not absolutely clear already, that is absolutely abnormal. The only way that the mind can think, the only way that reality exists in this closed system, this 3D closed system, is that it must latch onto something. It must stick. All the attempts, everything you ever read, and I would also suggest to you, they're now becoming students of myths. Don't waste your time. Students of myths. Is all of the great ones about physical magic and people floating through the air and levitating and all that is, back before they had the chemical basis to come up with such a term, all of these kinds of abilities to fly through the air or to levitate, that was simply their way of expressing what would have been a Teflon-coated mind. You cannot be stuck with the gravity of a closed system. But also, once you understand that a closed mind is totally adequate, it is just a perfect fit. Could not be better. There's nothing else to say. Once you understand that, then you understand that if you see anything beyond that, you got a whole new level of there's nothing else to say. Because who's going to hear it? What's it going to describe? Nothing. It will describe to ordinary people, it will describe a flawed universe. It will describe a flawed reality. It is thus that you can find your own mind finding, even if, let's say that some of you or most of you are past the point of any sort of internal, constant philosophical or theoretical argument over whether some religion or culture or part of your background had the idea of truth and goodness and justice and the long-range way of life correct or incorrect. It is still what you're faced with is you can't seem to bring anything under control. In a closed system, nothing is under control. A calm man, a man whose nervous system is not vibrating, a man who is not anxious, a man who is not upset in any way, in a closed system is a friggin' dead man. Unless we're talking about mentally, because everyone is anxiety-ridden by reality. Everyone is extremely and consistently anxious over the physical existence. All sane people. Nowadays, thank God, we have the technical wherewithal that you can even do things apparently to help bolster your physical health, such as run and carry along one of those portable things to check your blood pressure. Probably, but now I see signs saying sports medicine and sports doctors. For all I know, they've got physicians now that probably for a little added fee is above what they used to charge for house calls. I assume that you can find one who will jog along beside you and maybe give you a continuing kind of checkup to see how you're going. So all sane people are anxious about their physical self. They say that they're anxious about their mental self, and they're not. Okay, they say they are, so that makes them are. We'll give them that. But they're not anxious, they're not anxiety-ridden on the basis of, I need help. Oh, okay, they will say, I need help. If they some way accidentally stumbled into a fairy tale or some sort of strange dream and said, I need help, and somebody goes, all right, here it is. They would leave the office and begin to stagger and even act more disoriented or maybe try to throw up on the examining physician or the diagnostician. They would not tolerate it. They will not hear it because at the mental level you are not anxiety-ridden. You're simply dealing with a closed mind within a closed system, and it seems to be unsatisfying. And the trick is, it is absolutely satisfying. The proof being, well, I can only say it sort of theoretically. If you understood, if you saw that this is a closed system from everybody's view, at the all ordinary views, and you understood that there was something beyond that, you understood a secret, you understood something else, you would also understand, here's the proof that people are not anxiety-ridden, that people are not anxious mentally, because should you be so stupid, should you become so disoriented yourself that you turned around in a weak moment and tried to tell somebody, tried to show them that it's an illusion. It is part of being alive and breathing at the ordinary rate to feel as though you're anxious intellectually, because you're not. I know it doesn't make any sense verbally, but let's say that you had the ability to try and make them see that. It wouldn't do any good. There is your proof. Well, I was afraid of that. All right, I wrote it down as a mathematical formula, and it's in my... Jesus, I left it in other pens. Well, you're just going to have to go with that. It's a verbal description. Now, at least you think we're talking about somebody that knows something and everybody else. Look at you trying to figure out what to do on this train, trying to figure out, well, what is it to be done? If it's, again, I'll assume for the sake of assumptioning, that you're past the point of actually believing that there's a secret pill, a secret book, that there's any sort of physical activity that will directly lead to an alteration, that will directly lead to one going aha and seeing what the secret is, another state of awareness. So if that be true for the sake of assuming, then you're left with, well, it's all got to be somewhere in the higher end of the nervous system, and what can be done? Well, what are all of the tried and true methods? What is everything from commonly known prayers to attempts to meditate to, of course, drug taking and booze taking? What is all of the attempts to change one's consciousness? Which, don't forget, it's obviously irrelevant as hell. It's more irrelevant than common irrelevancy. But such things as people drinking is an attempt, is a slight attempt to achieve Buddhahood. Taking all kinds of drugs, the cheaper the better. Good old Percodan is an attempt to reach enlightenment. All of it is. It is life pushing very gently through almost everyone, all sane people, is nudging, and it's like the little roots, the little stems coming out from, let us say, the major trunk of the tree of life. Write that down. Now forget it. Somebody else already did that. But it's like these little buds, and they're springing up, and your nervous system is it. But it is constantly moving, it is constantly shaking, and physically, again, it's correct, because you should be anxious if you're sane. You should be anxiety-ridden about your health. Not enough to do much about it. That is, well, you know, but I'm not inferring that you should be going to the doctor to have checkups or to be taking your blood pressure. You should be not doing things that would harm your health. But you are going to be anxious, your body is going to be anxious, uncomfortable, unsatisfied until the day you die. Intellectually, people believe that it should be otherwise, even though they may call it spiritual. They do know that they're not speaking physically. Even the most fundamentalist and the simplest followers of religions, let's say, they at least differentiate. They know that what they're speaking of in the pursuit of their religion, the idea, the stated goals, the apparent attraction of their religion to them, they do know that it's not physical. It gets interesting for a few minutes talk, as we've gone through several times, and since it's not that, what do? Nothing but physical activity. Nothing but, and all the rules and regulations are directed toward the body, after they once state that we're here on a spiritual quest. Don't come here to get drunk. Don't come here to pick up women. Don't come here for the kingdom of Caesar. You're here for the kingdom of God. We're on a spiritual quest. And since they don't know what to do, all they do is then begin, after they state, it's like everybody states, we are here to go to Istanbul. And you join up wherever it is. It's a public announcement that we are on our way. We don't know how long it'll take. We don't know what the cost will be. But by God, we're all going to band together and we're going to Istanbul. And you join up. And if there's anything they will not do is ever leave that damn building. I mean, who knows what's out there? We're going to stay in Paris. Stay right here at the station, at least in the city limits. So once they state it and everybody shows up and goes, yay, that's it. Only an idiot. Well, only an unseasoned traveler. Only a child expects otherwise after once being bitten. So even ordinary people understand that the discomfort, the anxiety, the fidgetedness of being alive, if you present it to them, they'll admit, yeah, it's not physical. It doesn't mean that they will absolutely discount it, because people will still believe that if they look better, if they could afford plastic surgery, if they could lose weight, they would be happier. Or it's still physically based if they had a better job, lived in a better neighborhood, had an airplane, had a boat, that their life would be better. And yet, you can say, and an ordinary person can hear it, you can say, well, now that kind of discomfort, it's not your body saying that you've got to have a boat. It's not your body saying that you've got to have a Ferrari. And people hear, they go, well, no, you're right. Your body will enjoy it. No problem with that. But it's not your body that one day, like your big old fat ass went, you know, that it's tired of sitting on these cheap naugahyde seats in a Dodge Dart, and it wants to settle down in some good, fine, handcrafted leather in a Ferrari. And they go, no, you're right. So you understand, even though it ends up that the body is the one that would seem to be benefiting, that you say, well, it's a physical pleasure driving. Yeah, I know all that. But was it your body that brought that on? And they wouldn't know what to do with it, but you follow what I'm saying. Even ordinary people, it'd really throw them, I guess, for a loop. They'd listen for a second. They'd go, yeah. And they'd say, in other words, your body is not the one spurring you on. In fact, it was like, I want to lose weight. All right, let's say, I'm going to talk about somebody obese that can't get out of bed. Let's just say you put on 10 or 12 pounds over the last few years. It wasn't your body that went, goddamn, lose some weight. And people know that. Why do they have mirrors and gyms? So that your body, so that your stomach can look and see how much weight it's losing? Nobody since Buddha's second cousin had eyes in his solar plexus. It's so you can see up here. Because it was not your stomach, it was not your body. Even though it will say, well, I want to look better, I want to feel, yeah. It was up here that took your body there. It was up here that says, God, I wish, if I had a nice sports car. It was here that started. So all the way from that, to people involved with religion, even the crudest forms of religion that just nothing but blind, simplistic ritual, and they would call it spiritual as opposed to intellectual or mental. The thing is, people understand that there is, or they will hear you for a second. If you said the human anxiety, the human discomfort, the human lack of satisfaction is not physical. If you gave them right quick, like we understand that physically you've got to eat and you've got to sleep, and so at times when you're hungry, it is a form of being off balance. It is a form of anxiety, like your stomach, why is it? No, I may never eat again. You're just suddenly hungry. And you say, that there's that kind of anxiety, there's that kind of discomfort, and people go, yeah, all right. And you say, but that's not it in life. That is not what makes a human uncomfortable. That is not what makes a human dissatisfied. And as I said, I'm just doing this for the sake for you to see it with your own brain when you turn it on yourself, that the mind could go, yeah, but with an ordinary level, there's absolutely nowhere to go after that. About the most intelligent an ordinary mind could say if it followed that far would be look at you real quick before it lost the whole thread and go, well, what can you do? And then you'd have to say, well, do you have 40 years to talk about it? And they go, right, yeah. And then by then, thank God, it's off their mind. Whew. And they will make a mental note never to strike up a conversation with you again. They don't know why, they just know, no. Or not to ever have such a thought themselves. Which is, of course, easier, because then you can stay home and not do anything without having to go out in public and not do anything. There's a long news item in there about taking correspondence courses when you don't have a mailbox, but we're probably far enough away from this subject of air conditioning repair as it is. And I know there's going to be people tuning out, sitting there with their wrench and hammer waiting to... But at any rate, once you see for yourself inside, now let's forget talking about other people, that you, sooner or later, and it should be sooner by now, that some of you should be to the point of understanding, if I could stop this train from running, if I could in some way grease my mind, even though those of you that had glimpses of Istanbul, the first few times you never know exactly what happened, which is not important. It's not that you made a mistake. Nobody knows what happened. Trust me, if whoever first had the experience, the first time they had it, Buddha's great-great-great-great-grandfather, Zoroaster's original mask maker, the first guy that ever had it, the first time he had it, he went, what the hell is this? Stealing from one of the news items tonight that apparently was about something else, if you recall. When Life sent this man out on a special mission with a bag full of jokes, well, as it turned out, if you recall, it turned out to just be one joke. And the problems he had on that special mission, this is sort of the same thing as the first man who became more conscious. Well, what in the hell is this? Because there's no basis for it. It makes no sense based upon previous experience. Therefore, to tell the mind that if I could stop what's going on, I just feel like it might be conducive to seeing things better. And yes, 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 yes. You can almost pick up anything resembling, purported to be any sort of mystical literature. Some brochure from 4,000 years ago, a flyer from a telephone pole that Confucius put up or had somebody put up. As far back as then, if you get and you read any of it, just pick it out at random, and it's going to be something about trying to bring attention, the mind, consciousness, awareness under some sort of control. And many people can read that because we have right now, I'm sure YMCA is still having courses in meditation. And now it's just ordinary housewives and people showing up and meditating. And they can say, this is what we're after because it is so calming that if you can just stop that kind of chatter of the mind, it's so calming. And many people who would never even breathe across their lips the word mystic or anything strange, which is why they have this kind of thing nowadays at the YMCA or a church, because it's like, well, it can't be weird, or they wouldn't be having it at the YMCA. They don't come in square than the people around the YMCA. But they would still say the purported, if they put out a little prospectus on the benefits of meditating, it will talk about how refreshed one feels, that you can sit there and if you can learn to just calm the mind just for a few, for 15 minutes a day. I always like that they say if you can just calm the mind, which, well, it's the old, if anybody recalls, if I ever pulled up, that is the greatest stroke. It's one of, I know life gets tired of hearing me blow it up because its head is going to get such, I'm afraid life's going to quit talking to us or to me. And it's like you keep telling a girl how beautiful she is, how beautiful it is, you just on, and finally one day you call her after months of that, and she tells you she's decided if she's that good looking, she's too good for you. That's what I always fear about bragging on life. But life doesn't live in Mississippi like the place where that joke came from, so maybe. Is life, well, of course, it appears to be men. They don't know what they're doing, but treating an impossibility, treating a problematic situation as a fait accompli, which the greatest one, I believe I mentioned it to you, that I've seen recently, is that one of these weight loss companies, their national ads for a while was, anyway, the punchline of the ads for a while, one of the campaigns was, for a limited time only, lose all the weight you want here at Fred Mary Schwartz's weight loss, lose all the weight you want for $1 a pound. And that flashes for limited time only. You understand? It treats it as a given. I mean, all you got to do is show up. All we're talking about is money. That show up, lose all you want to for a limited time now. They don't say what, but the threat is obvious. That you better do it now, or this thing about lose all you want for $1 a pound, no, forget it. It's going up once you see that you're going to lose. You understand, they're treating it as a fait accompli that you're going to lose. It's just a matter, we've lowered the price. For every pound you lose, it's only going to be $1 for a limited time only. It is life treating the idea of another state of consciousness or bring your mind under control. It is like what I was saying is the common, and I'm not picking on contemporary times as you know, but it's been fairly common now, of these everyday events of just ordinary people over at schools and public places with no particular mystical patina put to it, but just meditate. And they say, well, just sit. It's not having anything to do with the religion. You can keep your own religion. But we just come here, we gather, we sit, maybe play soft music or light some incense. Because, just try it. Just try it, because calming your mind for 15 minutes a day will have unbelievable results. Lose all the weight you want for a dollar. God, if you could calm your mind for 15 minutes a day, trust me, Buddha, one way or the other, would dig himself out of the ground, put some kind of bones together, and find you and go, my God! But they treat it like calm your mind only. Just come over here, just try it. If you just do it like, even at work, if you can't come here, once we show you how to do it, like at work, when everybody else is taking a coffee and a pee break, go back in the cloakroom and sit down, and just for even 10 minutes, just calm your mind, and you'll be shocked at what it'll do. Well, shocked ain't the word. I'll reverse it the other way. If you could do that, you'd go looking for Buddha's grave and you'd dig him up. You'd dig up somebody. Now that I said that, sensing the difficulty involved, maybe you would go find Jenny Craig and just punch her in the mouth and try to some way work it all out. Well, then I guess assault on a famous figure, you could end up doing time for a felony, and most people lose weight in jail, at least. So it could work out. I don't know. Back to something a little more, what appears to be serious. If you could read, if you're interested, which everyone seems to enjoy some of this at times, you can look back and anything as non-exotic as the Judaic-Christian attitude in religion itself, in the rituals. The idea of prayer is exactly that. That was the original intent of prayer. And it doesn't matter whether anybody who said it or whoever it's credited to of any particular prayer. But the thing was to take something outside that which is required to contemplate, to be conscious in a closed system. Is to start praying to God, or to say, oh God, have mercy on me, let's just say. In a closed system, that is, there's no word for it. I can keep saying things like irrelevant, moot. It's an impossibility. It is an absolute moot act. It is like you're baying at the moon, and you can't make a sound, and there is no moon. Or you're shaking your fist at the sky, and you're a one-armed man, and the heavens have disappeared. There's no way to describe it, but trying to pray to something outside of a closed system. Now remember, this is people with a closed mind. I'm not even saying there's not something outside a closed system. But ordinary people, all it takes to perceive a closed system is a closed mind. Not just the majority of closed mind, but a mind that seems to be self-contained. That a mind, if you have any doubt as to what to think next, all you got to do is pick up a phone, turn to somebody next to you at a bar, and ask them a question, whether they have a degree in psychology or theology, or it's just a stranger who's barely coherent. Somebody will answer your question. Do you think there's a real meaning to life? You turn to the guy and go, yeah. And you feel better. I know it sounds to be a little silly exaggeration, but it takes a closed mind. It takes a person of extremely, once you understand closed mind, we say limited awareness or limited intelligence, makes me sound like a dolt. Because in a closed system with a closed mind, there is no such thing as limited intelligence. There's no such thing as stupidity. It's why you can't get the ordinary mind to accept that it's stupid, or that it's a prisoner, or that it's not free, because it'll run around inside that closed system and come back and look at you, rightfully so, as said dolt. Well, you're an idiot. Yeah, you're right, but you were. But within that closed system, that is its normal perception. That's the only way that anything makes sense. That is the, if you can see it, it is the whole process. It is the beginning and end of all logic, all sequence, all linear thinking. It is simply the beginning and end of reason. Because if the mind was not operating within a closed system, there is no such thing as logic. There's no such thing as science. Because you can never get to the end of anything. But apparently the human mind, and we got proof of it. Somebody figures, how can we make up your own, but somebody finds out about static electricity or looks at lightning. And they study and finally find a way to apparently harness it, hence, ergo, lights, television, electric fan. Because they got to a point of somebody figuring how to do this, and then went, and it got there, either through a stroke of eureka, or whether some process of gradual improvement, but got to a place that there was a period to the end of the sentence how to control the flow of electrical energy. And somebody did it, or some group of people did. That's the only way that anything makes sense to a 3D mind, is it has to be a closed system. Again, if anybody can listen real quick, it's again one of those beautiful tricks, because the mind, if it was following that, would want to say, wait a minute, that belies just what you said, because to say it gets somewhere, it can't be a closed system. Oh, yes. That's where periods go. That's how you come to a conclusion. Are you going to say more? Yes. You suddenly find yourself face to face with your ass. But at the ordinary level, at the scientific, the technological level, that is usually an achievement of some kind, or at least temporary relief. You go, well, I'll sleep on it, I'll think about it later. Or I'll check with my brother. I'll check with my minister. Within a closed system, even though people would say mentally that they believe that they're always on some sort of prowl, that they're always attempting to discover something new, there's nothing to be discovered new, and the whole idea that I was saying of attempting to petition forces outside the system, there is no word for it. I mean, there's no insult, there is no clinical observation as to the fruitlessness, the simplicity of a mind that is inside a closed system, and the mind itself is closed. To think it's appealing to a force outside the system, even if it existed, even if there is a God, even if there's some sort of gigantic force of some kind, some other something outside this universe, outside the universe, which the mind already gives up if you start that. But if there is, being inside a closed system with a mind appropriate there too, there's no better word than useless. And yet that's exactly what the mind appeals to. That is exactly whether people do it religiously based or not. If they begin to consider that the whole process or the whole trick is to extend your own level of consciousness, your own expansion of consciousness, that can sound as though it is some sort of improvement over simply praying to a God and not even knowing what you're doing, not even being sure, and even having an idea that something's wrong if I'm trying to appeal to forces inside this system, because it's forces inside this system that's got me upset already. Or it's finding out that all my jokes about Jim Henson, etc., are not jokes, that you've got to then believe that the force or the God or the extra systemic system, which is what you're appealing to, has actually got its hands inside the 3D world, inside this system, and it's got one hand up your drawers, which is the good guy, and its other hand up the bad guys. That's you against the world. But you have got to, well, I understand it that way, you have got to be operating on that basis, because that's what it would be. Inside a closed system, all of the things, the ideas of prayers, before I got off there for a second, is an appeal, is an attempt originally to bring a man's nervous system under some sort of control. And people didn't know why. And I say didn't know why, we're not talking about just 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. We're talking about you last week. You 10 years ago. If somebody said, here it is, you go, all right, bring your attention under some control. And they left. What would that do for anybody, including anybody that you may have thought of as some past spiritual hero? What if Lao, Zoroaster, anybody had been there and heard that, what would they have made of that? They would have gone, what the hell was that? If you tried to tell them a little more, if you expand the sentence past my original, hey, you want to know something? He goes, yeah. Bring attention under control. And he's gone. You go, what the hell was that? So he comes back. He goes, all right, what didn't you get? And you go, how am I supposed to? And he'd have to go, wait a minute. And he'd have to go off and think, what am I going to tell him? Because you have started the world's first, without even the grace of a diploma from a divinity school, you have started the world's first sermon. Because what you have told the person was, you should do it. Now, whatever force originally said it, which was life, to Adam, we're going to have to mix up these real fast. So that's a great thing about metaphors. Not only do they make no sense and hide the truth, but you can talk about them faster. Some of us, I know that some of you, I happen to know, are with me, we're trying to move into advanced cliches to make it even faster. But you've always got the problem with somebody trying to threatening legal action having to do with plagiarism and copyrights and all that. So it makes allegories easier because Adam's dead. And his estate is in shambles, so there is nobody to sue. Plus, the copyright laws run out, even if he was still alive. The force, life itself, the first urging past the level of consciousness at the collective level. The first force, 10,000, 20,000 years ago, let's say, it tells this one guy. It says, "You don't know something?" Of course, he would hear it in here, and he goes, "Yeah. Bring attention under control." And it's gone. And you think, well, wait a minute. And you like the idea. And it's absolutely inexplicable why you would. No way to defend it, no way to explain it. You either do or you don't. The same way that you can't explain what the hell you're doing here. And so it went, wait. So let's say the thing come back in your head. And you go, why should I? There you have asked, you have begged, you have pleaded. After all this time that many of you struggled to get out of going to church or Sunday school or temple, you stood there and begged somebody to suddenly make up sermons. Because something struck you that you liked that. It said, bring attention under control. And it went away and you went, wait. You knew you liked it, but you went, why? Which is the beginning. Ordinary people, I think, somewhere have said, why is the beginning, the question why is the beginning of all human intelligence? It's the beginning of all human stupidity. To a mystic. You all have to go through it. But that is the beginning of all stupidity. Because the first piece of important information that a man ever got was, this voice said, this force, this great mystical something or other. Anyway, one man somewhere heard, you don't know something? He went, yeah. Because by then he already knew everything that there was to know in general. And he just knew, like all of you, many of you did. You knew that, wait a minute, the insinuation, that tone of voice, this is getting good. And it says, you don't know something? You went, yeah. And it says, bring attention under control. And then it's gone. And you think about it, and then you get it back somewhere. You say, come back here a minute. So it comes back and you go, see, here goes the beginning of all human ignorance. You went, why? And it's worse than all human ignorance, the beginning of all human boredom, the beginning of all human torture of having to sit on hard benches and listen to somebody preach and hector and harangue, then ask for an offering on top of it, ask you to contribute money to let you out. It was the first guy went, why? And then the force, that whatever it was, went, wait a minute. And they had to think for a second. And it understood, well, I'm playing all the parts, that now it's saying why, which is the solicitation, please life, please whoever you are, give me a sermon. And it sounded to be a reasonable question, though, in the beginning, that you heard the idea of trying to be more conscious or whatever it was. First time you ever read about it. You went, yeah. And you thought, but why? You're just asking for it. Just begging for it. Because then somebody had to say, no matter what they said, what they did was then sermonize it for the first time. Now it's got nothing to do with waxing up your car now. They had to tell you, you should do it. Now it's according to how sharp you are, how sophisticated, how complex you are even at the ordinary level as to how directly it said that. Because it may have taken 20 additional words. Or it may have taken 20 additional years or 20 generations. But the force then had to respond when you said, why? Why should I control attention? And it's a reasonable question because it was already established. There was a closed mind, because I'm speaking about humanity in general, and it was already conceiving of reality. It was no longer life, it was conceiving of reality, and it just went on and on and on. It never stopped. You're always looking, always thinking, always doing this, and finally one day this voice said, you don't know something. You went, yeah. And it went, control that. And it's gone. You went, of course, that probably made it even get worse for a while. Like, oh. And then without being able to perhaps verbalize it, which wasn't important, you realize, wait a minute, that sounds so good, but we're back to the good old games about lose all the weight you want for only $1. treating it as though it was a fait accompli, and you realize, wait a minute, it made it worse. It gave me what sounded like the beginning of a secret, and it thrilled me so much, it made me get more excited. It made me get more diffused. So some of you said, psst, come back. Like 2 hours, 2 years, 20,000 years later, it came back. And you went, why? Because you knew that you already wanted to do it, but you went, why? And then it's got to say, because you should be. Then you're past the point of simple ignorance. You've reached a new level. Well, of course, you know I'm being silly and comical. You've reached a new level of frustration. Because it's on the basis that you should, you can't stop it. Because you are stuck in that closed mind that is totally adequate to understand what's going on, including the fact that other people say, well, you can't understand what's going on in life. And you go, well, I can understand that. That's true. I can feel it. That is not all there is. Which is what drags people into certain kinds of drugs, which is what drags people into, even common people, into the whole idea of if you could just calm your attention, if you could just almost blank your mind just for 15, all right, 10. I said 10, I'll say just 10 minutes a day. Or people who have had just little pieces of it. They don't know what to do, and then they want somebody to tell them what happened. What's the point of that? And which, of course, sends you back to this. It's like by the time you show up at Jenny Schwartz's weight loss clinic, where they say lose all the weight you want for $1 a pound, by the time you paid your money, and you can't believe how lucky you could be. By the time you pay your couple of bucks and walk out, you've put on weight. Try one more time. There it is. The archetypical mystic, the original paradigm of all more conscious men, and this voice suddenly in the head goes, you don't know something? And it goes, yeah. He goes, control attention. And it's gone, and then it's... Lose all the frustration you want for only $1 of frustration. Send it directly to me. To me. Do not put the name of the show directly to my name, marked personal. No checks.